Another day, seemingly another Zach LaVine trade rumor. This time, Zach LaVine being linked to both the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to talk about how and why right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, HAize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today, right? And so this is an update episode, not an emergency or anything, but it's something that I felt like was worthy of its own video and talk about. So Chris Mannix with Sports Illustrated has now listed that one of the players that the Philadelphia 76ers will be interested in acquiring with the draft picks they got in the James Harden trade is Zach LaVine. They also mentioned OG Anunoby, so that makes sense in there as well. And, you know, it does say in this, and I'll go on to say that it does list that OG Anunoby may be more prioritized by them considering the defensive aspect and how he could line up next to Tyrese Maxey. But Zach LaVine is mentioned in that as well. Now, keep in mind, the Philadelphia 76ers got back a 2028 first-round pick and a 2029 pick swap with LA, and then a future first-rounder from the OKC Thunder as well. It's always been rumored that that's kind of what they would like to use to acquire another guard when it comes down to it. Now, with the Philadelphia 76ers, they would still have to match salaries, right? And so, listen, not to say that they don't have interest in Zach LaVine. I do think with what they have available, probably OG Anunoby is more realistic for them. But hey, you just never know. And so when it comes down to it, right, you have to ask yourself, if the Bulls were to move on from Zach LaVine, would the assets that the Philadelphia 76ers have available make sense for them? Keep in mind, we've always heard that the Chicago Bulls want a young player, a salary cap filler, and 2 first-round picks back for the services of Zach LaVine. And so considering that may price them a little bit out of. Now, the Philadelphia 76ers do have their own first-round pick in 2024. They also have their own first-round pick with some protections on it in 2025. It's top 6 protected as far as OKC. So, you know, that there. They also have what they just acquired in that James Harden trade. So, you know, it could go that way. Now, here's what I'll say. I don't think, because if the Philadelphia 76ers, if they pair a player like Zach LaVine with Joel Embiid and they keep Tyrese Maxey, which is something that we've heard, those first-round picks for the Philadelphia 76ers aren't going to be all that great or amazing. So I don't necessarily see, they can match the salary of Zach LaVine pretty easily, right? With what they brought in as far as salaries, the Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington. They also have Tobias Harris that they could look to use to match salaries. If they wanted to match the salaries, they could. The biggest question is it a realistic package that the Chicago Bulls will be interested in? I say not. And I think that even if the Bulls, let's say this thing goes really left this season, the Bulls miss the playoffs and the play-in, I think that maybe if the Bulls do look to do something and go in a different direction, I think that's going to maximize more so what the Bulls are going to be wanting in trade value, because at that point it would signify a full rebuild. So I don't necessarily think that they can offer the best package, right? I just don't think that. I think OG Anunoby is probably more attainable for them, and I think that's more likely the case. Chris Mannix here, like I said, even in his article did mention that it's probably more likely OG Anunoby be something that they target. And, you know, Woj also said that the Philadelphia 76ers could hope to look to acquire somebody by the trade deadline, but they also are slated to have almost $60 million in cap space this upcoming summer, where they can use to acquire a player for picks and not really have to send out very much salary at all either. So it's not anything guaranteed that they're going to make a move by this trade deadline. They could look and explore to see what's out there, but they are fully willing and ready to wait till the free agency as well in the offseason and try to acquire something at that point in time. So at that point, they'd also be able to take a full look at what Maxey looks like without having James Harden out there, how he grows in that role, things like that, kind of be better able to gauge what they need as that in-between piece with that. So we'll see. They also acquired Kenyon Martin Jr., who I really like. But again, if we're talking about a Zach LaVine trade, it's going to take a little bit more than that, at least in my opinion. I could be off on that. You guys can let me know what you guys think on that down below. Do you think that the Philadelphia 76ers have enough to try to get Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls if the Bulls do look to move Zach? I mean, that's another biggest question in this, is that if they even look to move on from Zach LaVine. Now, another thing that we did get in this as well today is that per betting sites, the Brooklyn Nets were actually listed as the odds-on favorite to land Zach LaVine if he is moved. I'm sorry, the Miami Heat. I don't know where the Brooklyn Nets came from. The Miami Heat were listed as the odds-on favorite to land Zach LaVine if he is moved by this year's trade deadline. Now, that kind of makes a little bit more sense. The Brooklyn Nets, that's where it came from. The Brooklyn Nets were listed as the second best odds after the Miami Heat. Now, that makes a little bit more sense. We know the Miami Heat were looking to acquire a big-name player this offseason. They weren't able to get it done in either Dame Lillard or trying to get Drew Holiday, who they were rumored to be interested in. And they sit in a place where they can offer some first-round picks, but not a lot, right? More pick swaps than anything else. They have a 2024 first-round pick from Brooklyn has one from Houston. But as far as the Miami Heat, they don't have a lot as far as first-round picks to offer, right? They have their own 2024 first-round pick that they can't move because they have one out in 2025. They also have one out in 2026 with protections on it if the one doesn't convey in 2025. So they can't really move that one either. Now, they do have their own in 2027, 2028, 2029. Via the Stepien rule, they can only move the 2028 pick on top of that because, again, as of right now, that 2026 round pick is protected as well. So that makes it very limited on what the Miami Heat could offer in a trade for Zach LaVine. Now, as far as matching salary, we did hear that there was some interest in Tyler Hero before, even though I don't really see it. I don't like it. But, hey, they could offer Tyler Hero as well in that, and I understand what they're getting at with that. But, again, I don't see this as a perfect fit. I see this more, especially when they say it's the betting favorites, that kind of uses a different algorithm than reality. So I don't necessarily see that. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, which are listed as the second odds-on favorite to land Zach LaVine, that's where things get a little bit more interesting, right? So they have first-round picks, two first-round picks in 2025 they can offer, both their own and one from Phoenix that they can offer. They have their own in 2024. I'm sorry, they have one from Houston in 2024. They have another one from Houston in 2026. They have two first-round picks in 2027. So, listen, and they have, three first-round picks in 2029, so they can offer a bevy of future picks. But the question is, it's 2023. If this Bulls team is going to be looking at first-round picks that are all the way out as far as 2027, 28, something like that, that means that they're ready and prepared to go full rebuild for the long haul. And I don't know if I necessarily see that from this front office, but again, I could absolutely be wrong on that. Now, as far as matching salaries, that's where things get interesting, I think, when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets. They have players that not only could possibly fit the timeline of the Chicago Bulls, but could also offer some decent players. I don't think they're going to offer Cam Thomas. So right there, Bulls fans, if you're about to start asking for that, it's not coming, right? They're not coming up off of Cam Thomas. And even that, his $2.2 million contract barely puts a dent in matching Zach LaVine's contract. But when you look at it, they got Spencer Dinwiddie. They got Mikal Bridges. They got Cam Johnson, which they could look to move. Don't necessarily agree with it as they just signed him, but they have that as well. And they got Royce O'Neal, right? Another $9 million contract. So they have some contracts out there. I know some people are going to ask about Ben Simmons, and here's what I'll say on that. Hell no, hell fucking no. But again, so you got to ask yourself, with the rumors that are coming out around Zach LaVine, at what point does the smoke turn into fire, right? And Zach's even said as much himself. He says that he expects to be here for a long time, but he does believe that sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. And it really comes down to the success that this team has. Now, we said it 2-2 on the season, and it's looked bad, right? We have not shot the ball well. Zach LaVine hasn't looked extremely great in 3 out of those 4 games either. But I don't think this front office is at a point now where they are desperate enough to trade Zach LaVine for just anything. And we've said it before. I've said it here. They want a lot back for Zach LaVine because that's the value that they hold him in and know that he has around the league, even despite some Bulls fans being so down on Zach that they just want to send Zach and Vooch out just to send Zach and Vooch out. So, it really comes down to the success in this season. And I do think that we could see something drastic, not maybe a full rebuild, but something drastic by the trade deadline if the Bulls continue to struggle how they've struggled in some of these games so far this season. It really comes down to the success of the team and whatever AK looks at as the future. So, listen, I just wanted to go over those rumors because I think that that's something interesting. And it's something where we've been consistently on and off, right? Talking about Zach LaVine trade rumors now for about 3 years that we've heard it back. Now, it's definitely picked up since last trade deadline, where it's rumored the Bulls were talking with the New York Knicks or listened to an offer from the New York Knicks. They were never close on anything. But, we'll end up seeing. As we approach, we go through the season, as we get closer to the trade deadline, that picture may come together a little bit more. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think what percentage chance do you put on Zach LaVine potentially being moved this season by this trade deadline or at all? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.